The weight of the silver tray dug into my palm, leaving yet another red mark to match the constellation of burns and cuts that decorated my hands. 3 years of waitressing at Bellissimo, and my body still hadn't adapted to the punishment. The restaurant hummed with the gentle clinking of crystal glasses and muted conversations of Chicago's elite, their voices a hushed symphony of power and privilege that I had learned to tune out. Outside, autumn rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the city lights into watercolor smudges of amber and blue. Table 7's waiting on their Barolo, Sophie. Mr. Moretti doesn't like to wait. Marco's voice, tight with anxiety, broke through my exhaustion. I nodded, shifting my weight to my other foot to ease the burning in my arches. On it, Mr. Moretti. Even his name carried weight in this place, though I'd never served him personally. The owner always handled his table, but tonight, Marco was short-staffed after 2 servers called in sick. I'd been promised an extra 50 in tips if I took the section with the private alcove where the mysterious regular dined. "Don't make eye contact unless he speaks to you directly," Marco had instructed, his usual flamboyance replaced with uncharacteristic severity. "Pour from the right, clear from the left, and for God's sake, don't hover." The bottle of wine felt impossibly heavy as I approached table 7, tucked away in the shadowed corner with a perfect view of both the entrance and the kitchen doors. 3 men occupied the space designed for 6. 2 faced outward, their broad shoulders straining against tailored suits, eyes constantly scanning the room despite their relaxed postures. Security, obviously. Between them, with his back to the wall, sat a man I instantly recognized, despite never having seen his face. Some people didn't need introductions. They commanded recognition through the air that shifted around them, through the slight straightening of spines as others sensed their presence. Dante Moretti was barely 30, according to the whispers, yet he controlled half the city's underground. The youngest son to take over the Moretti family business in 3 generations. I kept my eyes lowered as I approached, focusing on the deep burgundy of the wine as I presented the bottle. "Your Barolo, sir." His hands came into view as he gestured approval, elegant fingers adorned with a single platinum ring on his right hand. No gaudy displays of wealth, just understated power. Pour. One word, but the voice sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Low and smooth like aged whiskey, with just the barest hint of his Italian heritage coloring the edges. I stepped forward, my hands steadier than I expected as I poured the wine with practiced precision. A mistake. I glanced up. Dark eyes captured mine, and for a suspended moment, everything else in the restaurant faded away. He wasn't conventionally handsome in the Hollywood sense. His features were too sharp, too severe for that. High cheekbones, a straight nose that had been broken at least once, and a mouth that seemed more accustomed to giving orders than smiling, but there was something magnetic about him, something that made it impossible to look away once caught in his gaze. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "You're new." Not a question, but a statement that demanded confirmation. "To your table, yes." I managed to keep my voice professional despite the sudden dryness in my throat. "I've worked at Bellissimo for 3 years. His eyebrow arched slightly, and I immediately regretted offering information he hadn't asked for. The security guards remained impassive, but I felt their attention sharpen. 3 years. He swirled the wine, his eyes never leaving my face, "And yet I haven't seen you before." I should have moved on to the next table, should have nodded politely and walked away. Instead, fatigue and the culmination of a 12-hour shift loosened my tongue. "Maybe you weren't looking," I replied, then immediately froze as I realized my error. The silence that followed seemed to stretch into infinity. One of the guards shifted slightly, but Moretti raised a hand, stilling him without even a glance. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A genuine sound that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish. "Touché." He raised his glass in a mock toast. "And your name is?" "Sophie. Sophie Calloway." "Sophie." He tested my name like he was tasting the wine, measuring its quality on his tongue. "Bring us the osso buco, and another bottle." I nodded and turned to leave, relief washing over me that my impertinence hadn't cost me my job, or worse. "And Sophie?" he called after me, causing me to pause. Only you. I don't want anyone else serving this table tonight. I felt his eyes on me all evening, tracking my movements as I weaved between tables. Each time I returned to serve another course or refill glasses, he engaged me in brief conversation. Nothing intrusive, just questions about the menu or the wine selection that gradually shifted to inquiries about how long I'd lived in Chicago, if I enjoyed working at Bellissimo. By dessert, an unexpected ease had developed between us. The guards remained vigilant, but Moretti had relaxed, one arm draped casually over the back of his chair as he declined the dessert menu. I have a theory about intelligence, he said suddenly as I cleared their espresso cups. His companions had stepped away, presumably to secure the exit before their departure. True intelligence isn't about education, or even natural aptitude. It's about adaptation, survival. I paused, unsure if he expected a response. You've survived here for 3 years, in a place where most last 6 months before the pressure breaks them. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I wonder what else you could accomplish in the right environment. The intensity of his gaze made my skin prickle. I'm just doing my job, Mr. Moretti. Dante. He corrected me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I've been watching you tonight. You're observant. You notice things. I thought of my tiny apartment with its leaking ceiling, the stack of past-due medical bills for my mother's cancer treatments, the community college classes I'd had to abandon when money got tight. What did this man, born into power and privilege, know about survival? I notice which customers need their water refilled. I deflected. It's hardly a superpower. You notice which of my men is left-handed and keeps his weapon in an ankle holster. You notice when the couple at table 12 started arguing, and you rerouted the birthday celebration to avoid passing their table. You notice patterns. My pulse quickened. I hadn't realized I was being so closely observed. What if I offered you something more than tips and sore feet? He pulled a small black card from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table. A challenge of sorts. I stared at the card, reluctant to touch it. What kind of challenge? His smile widened, revealing perfect teeth. A game of wits. 3 tests of intelligence and adaptation. If you win, he gestured broadly, encompassing the restaurant and beyond. I'll give you my lakeshore mansion, completely yours, no strings attached. A startled laugh escaped me before I could contain it. And if I lose? Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Then you work for me. 1 year. Whatever position I deem suitable for your skills. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings. This man was dangerous, unpredictable. But another part. The part that had grown up fighting for every scrap. That had watched my mother waste away because we couldn't afford better treatment. That stared at my ceiling each night wondering if this was all my life would ever be. That part whispered, what if? Why would you offer something like that to a complete stranger? I asked, buying time to think. Dante Moretti leaned back, studying me with those impenetrable dark eyes. Entertainment, he said simply. And perhaps because I've never met someone who could surprise me. I'm curious if you might. His guards returned, standing at a respectful distance. Moretti stood, buttoning his jacket with a fluid motion that spoke of ingrained elegance. Think about it, Sophie Calloway. My driver will be outside at midnight when your shift ends. He placed a folded bill beneath his water glass. 100, I glimpsed, and stepped away from the table. For your excellent service. He was nearly at the door when I called after him, my voice carrying across the now quiet restaurant. What makes you so sure I'm not already smarter than you? The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Moretti turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Then that small smile returned, sharper now. That, he said quietly, though I heard him perfectly across the distance, is exactly what I'm hoping to find out. After he left, I picked up the black card. It contained only a phone number, embossed in silver. I slipped it into my apron pocket, telling myself I would throw it away later. But as I finished my shift, collecting generous tips from the remaining tables, I kept touching the card through the fabric, like pressing on a bruise to see if it still hurt. By the time I clocked out at 11:45, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. I changed out of my uniform in the cramped employee bathroom, staring at my reflection in the spotted mirror. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my blonde hair hung limp around my face. I looked exactly like what I was. a 26-year-old waitress with too many responsibilities and too few options. The rational decision was to take the bus home, forget tonight had ever happened, and continue the safe, predictable struggle that was my life. The black car idling outside the employee entrance, its engine a soft purr in the rainy night, represented everything dangerous and unknown. I stepped out into the rain, clutching my worn jacket around me. The back door of the car opened, though no one emerged. An invitation, not a demand. Sometimes the most life-changing decisions feel anticlimactic in the moment. There was no dramatic internal struggle, no weighing of consequences. Just the rain soaking through my shoes, the promise of warmth, and the whisper of possibility. I walked toward the car and ducked inside, coming face to face with Dante Moretti once more. "I was beginning to think you might disappoint me, Sophie," he said, his voice filling the intimate space between us as the door closed with a soft, expensive click. "I'm just curious," I lied, settling into the butter-soft leather seat. "I don't actually believe you'd give away a mansion. I never lie about wagers." His eyes glinted in the passing streetlights, though I should warn you, no one has ever beaten me at this game. "There's a first time for everything," I replied, summoning bravado I didn't feel. His laugh was genuine, and it transformed his face into something almost boyish again. For a moment, I could see the man he might have been in another life, one without the weight of his family's legacy. "Indeed there is." He leaned forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something earthy and expensive. "Let the games begin, Sophie Calloway." The car pulled away from the curb, carrying me toward a future I couldn't begin to imagine. I had just made either the smartest or the stupidest decision of my life, and only time would tell which. The car glided through Chicago's rain-slicked streets, the city's lights blurring into streaks of neon through the tinted windows. Dante sat across from me, his posture relaxed, yet somehow still commanding the entire space. In the dim interior, his features were partially shadowed, making him appear even more enigmatic. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as anxiety and excitement battled within me. "My club," he replied, watching my reaction carefully. "The first test is better conducted somewhere private." Private. The word hung between us, loaded with implications. I fought the urge to fidget under his scrutiny. "And what exactly is this test?" His smile was subtle, but reached his eyes this time. "Patience, Sophie. Part of intelligence is handling the unknown with grace." The car turned onto a street I didn't recognize, pulling up to an unmarked building with a simple black door. No sign, no line of people waiting for entry. Nothing to indicate this was one of the most exclusive clubs in Chicago, if the rumors about Moretti's establishments were true. A mountain of a man opened Dante's door, then mine. The rain had stopped, but puddles reflected the streetlights like scattered mirrors on the sidewalk. Dante offered his hand to help me out, and I hesitated before accepting it. His palm was warm and dry against my cold fingers, the brief contact sending an unexpected jolt through me. "Welcome to Inferno," he said, as the black door opened silently at our approach. Inside was nothing like I'd imagined. No pulsing music or flashing lights. Instead, the space unfolded like a modern interpretation of a 1920s speakeasy. All dark wood, amber lighting, and plush furnishings. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and well-dressed patrons engaged in hushed conversations over crystal glasses. Several heads turned our way, expressions ranging from curiosity to calculation, before quickly returning to their conversations. "This way." Dante guided me with a light touch at the small of my back, leading me toward a private elevator guarded by another suited man, who nodded respectfully as we approached. "Your usual table is ready, Mr. Moretti," the guard said, pressing a button that opened the elevator doors. "Thank you, Vincent. We're not to be disturbed unless it's urgent." The elevator ascended smoothly to what must have been the top floor. When the doors opened, we stepped into a space that took my breath away. 3 walls of floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline, glittering against the night sky now that the rain had cleared. The 4th wall housed a bar stocked with bottles I couldn't begin to identify. A single table was positioned to take advantage of the view, already set with 2 crystal glasses. "Do you like it?" Dante asked, moving to pour amber liquid into each glass. "It's beautiful," I admitted, drawn to the windows. From this height, the city looked like something from a dream, all light and possibility without the grime and struggle I knew existed at street level. "I come here to think," he said, joining me with the glasses. "Some problems require elevation to be properly understood." I accepted the drink, our fingers brushing. "And am I a problem that needs solving?" The corner of his mouth quirked upward. "You're a puzzle I'm looking forward to unlocking." The liquid burned pleasantly as I sipped it. Expensive whiskey, smoky and complex. I wasn't much of a drinker, couldn't afford to be, but I recognized quality when I tasted it. "So," I said, turning to face him fully. "The first test?" Dante gestured to the table. "Please, sit." Once we were seated, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a small wooden box, placing it between us. It was intricately carved with geometric patterns but had no visible opening. "Inside this box is the key to the second test," he explained. "Your challenge is to open it without breaking it." I set my glass down and reached for the box. It was heavier than it looked, the wood smooth beneath my fingers. "Any hints?" "That would defeat the purpose." His eyes gleamed with amusement. "You have 1 hour. And if I fail? Then you lose the wager, and your year of employment begins tomorrow." He checked his watch. "Starting now." I examined the box carefully, turning it over in my hands. No seams, no obvious pressure points. I ran my fingers along every edge and surface, feeling for irregularities. Dante watched me silently, occasionally sipping his whiskey. "May I ask you something while I work on this?" I said, not looking up from the puzzle. "You may ask. I may not answer." "Why me?" "There must be hundreds of people more qualified for whatever job you have in mind." He was quiet for so long that I thought he might not respond. When he did, his voice had lost some of its playful edge. "I've been watching you for longer than you realize, Sophie. Not just tonight." He swirled the remaining whiskey in his glass. "You've caught my eye several times over the past few months." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. "That's unsettling." "Is it?" "I find it's prudent to observe people in their natural environment. It reveals things interviews can't." "And what did your observations reveal about me?" I asked, fingers still working at the puzzle box. His dark eyes fixed on mine. "Resilience. Intelligence. A woman fighting against circumstances beyond her control, yet never breaking. Someone underestimated and overlooked." Something in his assessment struck too close to home, making my throat tighten unexpectedly. I looked down at the box, blinking rapidly. "You're also stubborn," he continued, his tone lightening. "You've refused better job offers to stay at Bellissimo. I'm curious why." I snorted softly. "Better is relative. Waitressing allows me flexible hours to care for my mother. The tips are good, and Marco's understanding when I need to leave for emergencies. Your mother is ill." "Not a question." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak about it. My fingers found a tiny indentation on the bottom of the box, nearly invisible, unless you were looking for it. "And your father?" "Left when I was 12, I replied absently, pressing against the indentation. Nothing happened. "Said he wasn't cut out for family life." "Men who abandon their responsibilities deserve whatever fate befalls them," Dante said, a hardness entering his voice that hadn't been there before. I glanced up, surprised by the intensity in his expression. For a moment, I glimpsed something beneath the smooth exterior, a flash of the dangerous man others feared. "Is family important to you?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Family is everything." The conviction in his voice was absolute. "Loyalty, blood, commitment. Without these, what are we but animals?" I returned my attention to the box, processing this revelation. The ruthless Mafia boss with a devotion to family values. It shouldn't have surprised me. Wasn't that the cliché after all? My fingers found another indentation on the opposite side of the box. Then another, 4 in total, 1 on each side of the base. I pressed them simultaneously. Click. The top of the box shifted slightly. I looked up to find Dante watching me with undisguised interest. "You found the trigger points," he observed. "But that's only the first step." I turned the box over again. The top was loose now, but still wouldn't lift. I examined the geometric pattern more carefully, noting how certain lines connected across the surface. It wasn't just decoration. It was a map. "It's a sequence," I murmured, tracing the pattern with my fingertip. "The indentations need to be pressed in a specific order." I studied the flow of the design, following its logic. Then, working methodically, I pressed each indentation in the sequence I believed was correct. The box remained stubbornly closed. Frustration bubbled up inside me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to clear my mind and start over. I was overthinking it. I closed my eyes, feeling the pattern beneath my fingertips. What if it wasn't about the pattern, but about what the pattern represented? I opened my eyes and turned the box until the most intricate part of the carving faced me. Hidden within the geometric design was a stylized M, the Moretti family initial. I pressed the indentations in the order that traced the letter. With a soft click, the top of the box slid open. Inside lay a simple silver key. I looked up at Dante, unable to hide my smile of triumph. "How much time did I have left?" He checked his watch, eyebrows raised. 42 minutes. Impressive. "What does the key open?" I asked, reaching for it. His hand closed over mine before I could touch the key, his skin warm against mine. "That's for the second test, which will take place tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I withdrew my hand, feeling a strange mixture of disappointment and relief. "But my shift has been covered," he interrupted smoothly. "I've already spoken with Marco. You have the next 3 days off, with pay." My temper flared. "You had no right to." "I had every right," he countered, his voice remaining calm but taking on an edge that silenced my protest. "You accepted the wager, Sophie. 3 tests. Did you think they would all be completed in one evening?" Put like that, I supposed it was reasonable, yet the high-handedness of his actions grated against my independence. "My mother needs— Your mother will be looked after," he said, softening his tone. "I've arranged for a private nurse to visit daily while you're with me." I stared at him, speechless. "How did you even know about— As I said, I've been watching you." He pocketed the key and closed the box with a decisive click. "You should know what you're getting into, Sophie. I don't do anything halfway." Warning bells rang in my head, yet mingled with them was a treacherous whisper of temptation. No one had ever offered to help with my mother before. No one had ever truly seen the weight I carried. "Why go to all this trouble?" I asked finally. "If you want to hire me, just make an offer." Dante leaned forward, his dark eyes intent on mine. "Because I want more than just your skills, Sophie. I want your trust, your loyalty. Things that can't be bought, they must be earned. And you think this game will earn them? I think it will show you who I am and who you could be." He stood, offering his hand. "It's late. My driver will take you home. Tomorrow morning at 9, he'll collect you for the second test." I rose without taking his hand, needing to maintain some semblance of independence. "And if I decide not to continue?" His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Then you forfeit, and our original agreement stands. 1 year of service." We descended in the elevator in silence, the air between us charged with unspoken thoughts. At the club's entrance, Dante's driver waited with the car. Before I could step outside, Dante caught my wrist gently. "There's one more thing you should know," he said, his voice low. "I don't lose, Sophie. Ever. But I find myself hoping you might prove exceptional." The intensity in his eyes made my pulse quicken. I pulled my wrist free, needing distance from the confusing emotions his proximity evoked. "Good night, Mr. Moretti." His smile returned, that dangerous edge softening just for a moment. "Dante, remember, we're beyond formalities now." As the car pulled away from the curb, I watched his figure grow smaller in the rear window, standing motionless outside his club. Only when he disappeared from view did I realize I was still clutching the empty puzzle box, my fingers tracing the hidden M in its design over and over. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind racing with thoughts of dark eyes and puzzle boxes. My apartment felt smaller than usual, the water stain on the ceiling more pronounced, the ancient radiators clanking louder. Everything I'd accepted as normal suddenly felt temporary, as if my life had been placed in quotation marks. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep and checked on my mother. She was resting peacefully, the soft whistle of her breathing a familiar comfort. I brushed a strand of gray hair from her forehead, studying the face that had once been a mirror image of mine before illness had carved deep lines into it. "What am I doing, Mom?" I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. The heavy medication kept her pain at bay, but also kept her adrift in a foggy half-consciousness most days. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching dawn break over the city. The puzzle box sat on my kitchen table where I'd left it, a physical reminder that last night hadn't been a dream. I picked it up, examining the craftsmanship more carefully in the morning light. It was exquisite work, custom-made, certainly, the kind of object owned by people who never had to check price tags. At precisely 8:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Ms. Calloway." A man's voice, not Dante's. "The car will arrive in 30 minutes. I hesitated, suddenly uncertain. "Who is this?" "Mr. Moretti's head of security. A nurse will arrive for your mother at 9 and stay until 6 this evening." He paused. "Will that be sufficient?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes, that's fine. Thank you." "The car will be waiting downstairs." He hung up without further pleasantries. I dressed carefully, conscious in a way I hadn't been before of my limited wardrobe. I settled on black jeans, a blue blouse that brought out my eyes, and boots with only minimal scuffing. My blonde hair went into a simple braid. Practical, not trying too hard. I had no idea what the second test would entail, but I wanted to be comfortable and mobile. True to his word, a sleek black car idled outside my building at 9. The same driver held the door, nodding respectfully as I approached. Inside, I was surprised to find myself alone. No Dante waiting with enigmatic smiles and expensive whiskey. "Where are we going?" I asked the driver once we'd pulled away from the curb. "Mr. Moretti will meet you there, ma'am." I settled back against the leather seat, watching the city transform as we drove north. Dilapidated buildings gave way to gleaming towers, cramped convenience stores to boutiques with artfully minimalist window displays. We were heading toward the Gold Coast, Chicago's wealthiest neighborhood. The car eventually turned into a private drive, stopping before an imposing limestone building. Old money, pre-war architecture, the kind of residence that had weathered the Great Depression without noticing. A doorman stepped forward immediately, opening my door. "Ms. Calloway, welcome to the Astor. Mr. Moretti is expecting you in the penthouse." The lobby was all marble and mirrors, a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a European palace, casting rainbow prisms across the polished floor. I followed the doorman to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. "Mr. Moretti has arranged temporary access for you," he explained, handing me a gold-embossed card. "This will take you directly to the penthouse." Alone in the elevator, I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Whatever game Dante was playing, I needed to keep my wits about me. This wasn't just about a mansion anymore. It was about proving something to myself. The elevator opened directly into a foyer larger than my entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking view of Lake Michigan, its surface glittering in the morning sun. The space was decorated in shades of cream and gold, elegant yet somehow restrained. Speaking of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. "Sophie." Dante's voice came from my right. He stood in the doorway to what appeared to be a study, dressed more casually than I'd seen him before. Dark trousers and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Right on time. Your directions didn't leave much room for tardiness," I replied, stepping into the apartment. "Nice place." His mouth quirked. "One of several. Coffee?" I nodded, following him through to a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. He moved with easy familiarity, preparing 2 cups from an elaborate espresso machine. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, sliding a cup toward me across the marble island. "Not particularly." I accepted the coffee, our fingers brushing briefly. "I'm not used to high-stakes games with strangers." "Are we strangers?" He leaned against the counter, studying me over the rim of his cup. "I feel like I know you quite well, Sophie." "That's the problem," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "The imbalance. You know about my mother, my job, where I live. I know almost nothing about you beyond your reputation." "Fair enough." He set his cup down. "What would you like to know?" The directness of his offer surprised me. I considered carefully. Why this game? Why offer a mansion to someone you barely know? His expression grew thoughtful. I told you. Entertainment. But there's more to it. He gestured for me to follow him back toward the study. I've achieved everything expected of me. Business success, family loyalty, power. But predictability is its own kind of prison. The study was warm and intimate compared to the rest of the apartment, lined with bookshelves and dominated by an antique desk. Dante indicated a leather chair for me before taking the one opposite. Everyone in my world wants something from me, he continued. Protection, favors, money, connections. Their motives are transparent, their moves predictable. But you... His eyes locked with mine. You've caught my attention precisely because you don't fit any pattern I recognize. I'm just trying to survive, I said simply. With extraordinary dignity, he countered. You could have taken easier paths. I know about the offers you've received. Managing positions at upscale establishments. Opportunities that would have meant more money and less physical strain. A chill ran through me. How long had he been watching me? How much did he know? Those jobs would have meant fixed hours, I explained, trying to mask my unease. I need flexibility for my mother's care. Precisely. Family first. Approval warmed his tone. That kind of loyalty is rare, Sophie. And valuable. He rose, moving to the desk where a chessboard was set up. Pieces arranged mid-game. Do you play? I shook my head. Never learned. A pity. Chess teaches valuable lessons about strategy and sacrifice. He moved a black knight, capturing a white pawn. Sometimes the most unassuming piece can change the entire game. There was something deliberate in the way he placed the captured pawn aside, something that made me think we weren't just talking about chess anymore. The second test, I prompted, steering us back to the reason for my presence. Yes. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the silver key from yesterday's puzzle box. This opens something in this apartment. Your challenge is to determine what and why it matters to me. I accepted the key, turning it over in my palm. It was old-fashioned, the kind that might open a diary or jewelry box rather than a modern lock. Any parameters for this test? I asked. You have 3 hours. You may explore freely except for the secured room at the end of the hall. That's off limits for security reasons. I'll be working in the living room if you need clarification on the rules. With that, he left me alone in the study, the silver key cool against my skin. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, sipping the excellent coffee and considering my approach. This test seemed more psychological than the first, designed to reveal how I thought, what I noticed, what I deemed important. I began with the study, examining the bookshelves first. The collection was extensive and eclectic. Italian classics in their original language, modern business texts, historical biographies, and, interestingly, several volumes on art history. I noted the most worn spines, the books that had clearly been read multiple times. The desk revealed little, too neat to contain casual clues. The chess game, however, drew my attention again. It wasn't a random arrangement of pieces, but appeared to be a famous match, perhaps even documented in chess history. I took a photo with my phone to research later if needed. Moving through the apartment, I maintained a mental inventory of potential locks, a jewelry box in the master bedroom, a small safe concealed behind a landscape painting, a locked cabinet in the kitchen, several drawers and various pieces of furniture, too many possibilities to try randomly within the time limit. In the living room, Dante worked on a laptop, occasionally taking calls in rapid Italian. He acknowledged me with a nod, but otherwise didn't interfere with my exploration. His security detail, 2 men today, maintained a discreet presence by the elevator and at the entrance to the forbidden room. After an hour of methodical searching, I'd found nothing that seemed significant enough to be the target. I paused in a hallway lined with photographs, studying them for clues. Most were formal family portraits. Dante with older men who shared his features, elegant women draped in jewels, all posed stiffly for the camera, but one photo stood apart, a candid shot of a younger Dante with an elderly woman, both laughing as they prepared food in a rustic kitchen. The genuine joy in his expression was striking compared to his usual controlled demeanor. I moved closer, noting the tarnished frame, Silver, unlike the others, and far less expensive looking. As I leaned in to examine it, my sleeve caught on something, a tiny keyhole, nearly invisible in the ornate design of the frame. My heart quickened. I removed the frame carefully from the wall, turning it over. The backing was secured with small clasps, nothing that required a key. But when I ran my fingers along the edge of the frame itself, I felt a subtle indentation, a hidden compartment. I inserted the silver key, holding my breath. It fit perfectly. With a gentle turn, a section of the frame slid open, revealing a folded piece of paper and a delicate gold locket. Carefully, I opened the locket first. Inside was a tiny photograph of the same elderly woman from the picture, her smile gentle and knowing. I unfolded the paper next. A handwritten recipe in Italian, the handwriting shaky with age, my grandmother's ciambella recipe. Dante's voice came from behind me, causing me to start. I hadn't heard him approach. I turned to face him, the locket and recipe still in my hands. I hope I'm not intruding on something too personal. His expression was unreadable, dark eyes studying my reaction. That's precisely the point of the test, Sophie. To see if you could find what matters most. Not the safe behind the painting? Or the locked cabinet with the expensive scotch? I asked. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Those would have been predictable assumptions based on who you think I am. I looked down at the recipe and locket again. Your grandmother was important to you. She raised me after my mother died, he said quietly. Taught me everything about family, loyalty, tradition, the values that guide my life. The admission felt significant, a piece of himself offered freely, without calculation. I returned the locket and recipe carefully to their hiding place. Why conceal these things in a hidden compartment? They're not valuable except sentimentally. His gaze intensified. In my world, Sophie, sentiment is a vulnerability. Caring about anything or anyone gives others power over you. That sounds like a lonely way to live, I said before I could stop myself. It's a necessary precaution. He took the frame from my hands, securing the compartment and rehanding it with a care that belied his words. Congratulations. You've passed the second test. By finding what matters to you beyond the obvious trappings of power, I concluded. He nodded, watching me with a new appreciation. Most people see only what's on the surface. Wealth, influence, control. They never look for the foundation those things are built upon. Family, I said, thinking of my own mother. The sacrifices I'd made willingly for her care. Roots. Precisely. Something shifted in his expression. A brief glimpse of vulnerability quickly masked. You continue to surprise me, Sophie. I felt suddenly self-conscious under his scrutiny, aware of how close we were standing in the narrow hallway. What now? Is there a third test today? No. He stepped back slightly, the moment broken. Tonight, you dine with me. Tomorrow, the final test. And if I pass that one, then the mansion is yours, as promised. His smile returned, with that edge of danger that reminded me who he really was beneath the civilized veneer, though I'm beginning to think I may have underestimated you. Dante insisted I accompany him to select an outfit for dinner, brushing aside my protests that my clothes at home would suffice. The third test requires a specific setting, he explained as we rode in his car toward Michigan Avenue. Consider this preparation, not charity. I bit my tongue, swallowing pride that I couldn't afford. His driver took us to a boutique with no visible price tags, always a dangerous sign for someone accustomed to clearance racks. A sleek woman greeted Dante by name, her eyes assessing me with professional interest. Something elegant but understated, he instructed her, for tonight's event. I was whisked away to a fitting room while Dante settled into a leather chair with his phone. The next hour passed in a blur of silk, cashmere, and fabrics I couldn't name but instantly recognized as luxury against my skin. Each time I emerged, Dante would look up, his dark eyes appraising me with an intensity that made my cheeks warm. That one, he finally said when I appeared in a midnight blue dress that fell just above my knees, its deceptively simple cut revealing careful tailoring. Perfect. The saleswoman beamed. Excellent choice, Mr. Moretti. Shall we add suitable accessories? Before I could protest, I was presented with delicate silver jewelry and Italian leather heels. Throughout the process, Dante maintained an air of detached interest, offering opinions only when asked directly. Yet I felt his attention like a physical presence, cataloging my reactions, noting my hesitations. When I finally stood fully dressed before a three-way mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman reflected back wasn't a waitress with perpetual dark circles and practical clothing. She looked confident, elegant, as if she belonged in Dante Moretti's world. "Beautiful," he said quietly, appearing behind me in the mirror. His eyes met mine in the reflection, something unreadable flickering in their depths. "But then, you always were." The compliment caught me off guard, sincere in a way his practiced charm wasn't. I looked down, unsure how to respond. "Thank you for this. I'll pay you back after. Consider it part of our wager," he interrupted smoothly. "Tools for the challenge ahead." He insisted I wear the outfit immediately, having my old clothes sent to my apartment. As we left the boutique, his hand rested lightly at the small of my back. Proprietary, protective, impossible to interpret. "There's time before dinner," he said as we slid back into the car. "Would you like to see it?" "See what?" "The mansion. Your potential prize." Curiosity overwhelmed caution. Yes. The drive took us north along Lakeshore Drive, past the exclusive neighborhoods of the Gold Coast, and into the even more rarefied air of the North Shore suburbs. Eventually, we turned onto a private drive shrouded by ancient oak trees, their branches forming a natural canopy that separated this property from the outside world. When the trees parted, I couldn't contain a soft gasp. The mansion stood like something from another era, a sprawling limestone structure with a slate roof and ivy climbing its walls. Formal gardens stretched toward the lake visible beyond, and a fountain played in the circular drive where our car came to a stop. Words failed me. "Built in 1929, just before the crash," Dante supplied, watching my reaction closely. 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, library, conservatory, wine cellar. The grounds cover 4 acres with private lake access. I stepped out of the car, trying to comprehend the scale of what I was seeing. "It must be worth more than you could earn in several lifetimes," he finished bluntly. "Does that intimidate you?" I turned to face him, studying his expression. "Why would you gamble something like this on 3 tests? It doesn't make sense." Something darkened in his gaze. "Perhaps I'm more certain of winning than you realize, or perhaps there's something you're not telling me about this place." His smile was slow, appreciative, perceptive. "Let me show you inside." The interior matched the grandeur of the exterior. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, antique furniture that probably belonged in museums. But as Dante led me through the rooms, I noticed subtle details that puzzled me. A woman's cashmere throw draped over a chaise, fresh flowers arranged in a vase, recent magazines on a coffee table. "Someone lives here," I said, stopping in a sitting room overlooking the lake. Dante's expression remained neutral. "Until recently, yes." "Who?" He studied me for a long moment. "My wife." The word hit me like a physical blow. "You're married?" I took an instinctive step back, feeling suddenly foolish in the dress he'd bought me. "Widowed," he corrected, his voice flat. 8 months ago." Shame replaced shock. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Few people do." He moved to the windows, looking out at the lake. Mia preferred privacy. Our marriage remained silent, complicated, sensing there was more to the story. Unsure if I wanted to hear it. "This was her sanctuary," he continued after a pause. "I haven't changed anything since she died." Understanding dawned slowly. "The mansion. You're not really giving it away, are you?" He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "I made a promise, Sophie. If you win the 3rd test, this place is yours. But it's your wife's home." "Ex-wife," he corrected, something hardening in his tone. "And I have my reasons for wanting to be rid of it." The atmosphere had shifted, tension crackling between us. I felt suddenly out of my depth, a pawn in a game whose rules I didn't fully understand. Whatever Dante's relationship with his late wife had been, it had left wounds that hadn't healed. "Perhaps we should go," I suggested quietly. He checked his watch. "Yes. Our dinner reservation is in an hour." The drive back into the city passed in strained silence. I stared out the window, processing this new information. A widower at 30, an empty mansion preserved like a mausoleum. And beneath it all, currents of emotion I couldn't begin to navigate. The restaurant was exclusive even by Chicago's standards, a converted townhouse with only 12 tables, each separated from the others by clever architectural features that created the illusion of private dining rooms. The maitre d' greeted Dante with the deference reserved for valued regulars, leading us to a corner table overlooking a small courtyard garden, illuminated by fairy lights. "Mr. Moretti, always a pleasure. Your usual wine." Dante nodded, pulling out my chair before taking his own. Once we were alone, he seemed to shed some of the darkness that had enveloped him at the mansion. "I apologize for my mood earlier," he said, surprising me with his directness. The house brings back complicated memories. I studied him across the table, this enigmatic man who veered between calculated charm and genuine vulnerability. "You don't have to explain." But I do. His eyes met mine. The third test requires context. The sommelier appeared with a bottle, going through the ritual of presentation and tasting before pouring 2 glasses and disappearing as discreetly as he'd arrived. Dante raised his glass slightly. "To unexpected connections." I mirrored his gesture, taking a small sip of what was undoubtedly an astronomically expensive wine. "Tell me about your wife," I said, deciding directness was the only approach that made sense anymore. His expression flickered with surprise before settling into something more guarded. "Mia was brilliant, an art historian from an old Venetian family. We married young, a merger of interests as much as a romance." "A business arrangement?" I asked. "Initially." He traced the rim of his glass with one finger. "Her family had connections mine needed. My family had the financial stability hers lacked. But over time, it became more." "You fell in love." A shadow crossed his features. "In my own way, yes. Mia was complex, fiercely independent, sometimes reckless. She had a talent for finding beauty in darkness." The way he spoke of her, a mixture of admiration, frustration, and lingering pain, made me wonder about the true nature of their relationship. "What happened to her?" "Car accident." His response was clipped, final. The official version, at least. My blood chilled at the implication. "And the unofficial version?" His eyes locked with mine, measuring me. "That's part of the third test, Sophie. How much truth can you handle? How far are you willing to go to uncover it?" Before I could respond, the waiter arrived with our first course, delicate plates of artfully arranged seafood. Dante shifted seamlessly into the role of charming dinner companion, asking about my preferences, recommending dishes, steering the conversation to lighter topics. Throughout the meal, I found myself drawn to him despite my misgivings. His intelligence was evident in his observations about art, politics, and human nature. His attention never wavered from me, no checking phones or scanning the room as most men did. When he listened completely, as though my thoughts on the most mundane topics were worthy of his full consideration. By dessert, the earlier tension had dissolved into something more dangerous, a connection I couldn't dismiss as mere manipulation. Whatever game Dante was playing, he was playing it with parts of himself that were genuinely real. "Tomorrow," he said as we finished our coffee, "the final test will begin at noon. It will be different from the others." "How so?" "The first 2 tests measured your intelligence and perceptiveness. The third will test your courage." His expression grew serious. "You can still walk away, Sophie. Keep your job at Bellissimo. Return to your life. I'll consider our wager void." The offer was tempting. In 2 days, Dante Moretti had upended everything familiar about my existence, making me question choices I'd never thought to examine. Walking away would mean returning to safety, grueling shifts, medical bills, and the slow suffocation of limited options. But safety, nonetheless. "And if I don't walk away?" I asked quietly. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "Then you commit to seeing this through, whatever it reveals. About me. About yourself." "That sounds more like a warning than a test description. Perhaps it's both." He signaled for the check, signing without even glancing at the total. Your choice, Sophie. But choose carefully. Some doors once opened can't be closed again. Outside, the night air had turned cool. Dante draped his jacket over my shoulders, the weight of it solid and warm against the thin fabric of my dress. His scent enveloped me, sandalwood and something uniquely him, both comforting and disorienting. Take me home, I said finally. I need to think. The drive to my apartment was silent, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When the car pulled up to my building, Dante didn't immediately signal for his driver to open the door. Whatever you decide, he said quietly, know that these past 2 days have been illuminating. For me too, I admitted, though I'm still not sure what any of this means. His smile was tinged with something that might have been regret. Meaning comes after understanding, Sophie. And understanding requires courage. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. Until tomorrow. Or not. The choice is yours. I stepped from the car, clutching the key he'd pressed into my palm, not the silver key from the tests, but a new one, modern and unadorned, for the front gate, he explained. If you decide to come. As the car pulled away, I stood on the sidewalk, the key digging into my skin as I closed my fist around it. The rational decision was obvious. Walk away from whatever dangerous game Dante Moretti was playing, return the borrowed finery, forget about mansions and tests, and resume the life I understood. But as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I knew rationality had little to do with the choice I was already making. Morning arrived with indecision still weighing heavily on my mind. I'd barely slept, torn between self-preservation and the magnetic pull of unfinished business with Dante Moretti. My mother seemed more lucid than usual during breakfast, studying me with eyes that missed nothing despite her frail condition. Something's different, she observed, her thin fingers curling around her teacup. You've met someone. I looked up, startled by her perception. Why would you think that? Her smile was knowing, a glimpse of the sharp-witted woman she'd been before illness had claimed so much of her. You're wearing the good perfume, and you've checked your phone 6 times in 10 minutes. Heat rose to my cheeks. It's complicated. The interesting ones always are. She reached across the table, her touch light on my wrist. Just remember who you are, Sophie. Don't lose yourself, even for something that glitters. Her words followed me as I dressed in my most presentable outfit, black pants and a cream sweater that had once belonged to her. Simple, practical, true to myself, despite the memory of silk and designer labels still fresh in my mind. At 11:30, I stood at my window, watching the street below. No black car waited. Dante had meant what he said. The choice was truly mine. The key he'd given me sat heavy in my palm, its weight disproportionate to its size. I called the nurse agency first, confirming someone would stay with my mother until evening. Then I ordered a rideshare, the expense making me wince even as I entered the address I'd memorized from yesterday's drive. The journey north felt surreal, neighborhoods transforming around me as we drove further from the city center. The driver gave me a curious look when we reached the imposing gates of Dante's lakeside estate, but said nothing as I let myself out. For a long moment, I stood before the wrought iron gates, key in hand. Whatever waited beyond was unknown territory, not just physically, but emotionally. The safe choice would be turning around, pretending these past days had been nothing more than an unusual interlude. Instead, I inserted the key and pushed the gate open. The gravel drive crunched beneath my feet as I walked toward the mansion. No car in sight, no security personnel visible, though I had no doubt I was being watched. The fountain burbled serenely in the crisp autumn air, its sound almost loud in the surrounding stillness. I climbed the stone steps to the main entrance, heart pounding. Before I could knock, the heavy door swung open. Dante stood framed in the doorway, dressed more casually than I'd seen him before, dark jeans and a charcoal Henley that somehow made him seem more dangerous than his tailored suits. You came. His voice revealed nothing, but his eyes, those dark, inscrutable eyes, seemed to search mine for answers I wasn't sure I had. I'm not sure why, I admitted, but walking away felt like the greater risk. Something shifted in his expression. Approval, perhaps, or relief. Come in. There's something you need to see. He led me through the grand foyer into a different wing than we'd explored yesterday. This section of the mansion felt more lived in, less like a museum and more like an actual home. We stopped at a door at the end of a corridor where he paused, hand on the knob. "The third test isn't about intelligence or perception," he said quietly. "It's about truth. Are you ready to see it?" I nodded, mouth suddenly dry. He opened the door to reveal what appeared to be a home office, elegant but functional, with a large desk facing windows that overlooked the lake. But what caught my attention were the walls, covered with photographs, documents, and maps connected by red strings, like something from a detective film. "What is all this?" I asked, stepping closer to examine the nearest collection of images. "My wife's research," Dante replied, closing the door behind us. "Or more accurately, her obsession." The photographs showed various men, some in business attire, others more casually dressed. Several faces appeared multiple times. With a jolt, I recognized Dante in some of them, younger, his expression harder than the man who stood beside me now. "Mia wasn't just an art historian," he continued, moving to stand beside me. "She was investigating my family's business dealings, gathering evidence, building a case." Understanding dawned slowly. "Against you? Her own husband?" His laugh held no humor. "Marriage provides excellent cover for surveillance. Our families arranged our union believing it would strengthen alliances. Neither suspected she had her own agenda." I moved along the wall, taking in the scope of her investigation. Newspaper clippings about businesses I recognized as Moretti Holdings, property deeds, shipping manifests, financial records, years of meticulous research. "She was an informant," I said, the pieces falling into place. "Working with the FBI eventually." His voice remained neutral, but tension radiated from his body. "Though she began independently. Her brother died of an overdose when she was 19, heroin supplied by one of my family's associates." I turned to face him, searching his expression. "Did you know? All along?" "Not at first." He moved to the desk, running his fingers along its polished surface. "I discovered her true purpose 3 years into our marriage, found her photographing documents in my father's study during a family gathering." A chill ran through me. "What did you do?" His eyes met mine, unflinching. "What would you expect a man in my position to do, Sophie?" My throat tightened. "I don't know you well enough to answer that." "That's the heart of the third test." He gestured to the evidence surrounding us. "Knowing what my wife was doing, knowing what my family is capable of. What do you think happened to Mia Moretti?" The implication hung heavy in the air between us. I studied him carefully, this man who had entered my life with puzzles and wagers, whose world existed in shadows I'd only glimpsed. "You said she died in a car accident," I said slowly. "But you implied that was just the official story." "Yes." He watched me intently, waiting. I thought about everything I'd learned about Dante. His intelligence, his attention to detail, his devotion to family legacy, but also his appreciation for perception, his respect for loyalty, his capacity for genuine feeling beneath the calculated exterior. "You didn't kill her," I said finally, certainty growing as I spoke the words. "It doesn't fit. The preserved mansion, the tests focused on intelligence and perception rather than blind loyalty. You respected her mind even if she betrayed you." Something eased in his posture, a tension I hadn't fully registered until it dissipated. "Go on." "She was gathering evidence against your family, not just you personally," I continued, the pieces arranging themselves as I spoke. "When you discovered what she was doing, you had a choice, your wife or your family loyalty." I moved toward him, watching his reaction. "You chose a third option. You helped her." His eyes widened fractionally, the first time I'd truly surprised him. "What makes you so certain?" "The mansion," I replied. "You're not giving it away because it reminds you of betrayal. You're giving it away because it's the last connection to a life you left behind." Understanding bloomed as I spoke. "The car accident wasn't real, was it? You helped her disappear, staged her death to protect her from your family." For a long moment, Dante was perfectly still, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he smiled. Not the calculated charm he'd displayed in our earlier encounters, but something genuine that transformed his entire face. "Exceptional," he said softly. "Truly exceptional." "Am I right?" I pressed. almost entirely. He moved to a painting on the far wall, swinging it aside to reveal a safe. With practiced movements, he dialed the combination and removed a thick folder. Mia is alive, living under a new identity in Scandinavia. The accident provided cover for her extraction by federal agents. He handed me the folder. Inside were documents detailing a complex immunity arrangement, witness protection protocols, and finally a divorce certificate dated 6 months prior. "You turned state's evidence," I said, the full picture becoming clear. "Against your own family, against certain elements within the organization," he corrected. "My father died 2 years ago. In the power struggle that followed, some factions wanted to take our business in directions I couldn't support. So you worked with your wife and the authorities to dismantle those operations," I concluded, "while preserving what you could of the legitimate family enterprises." "It was the only honorable path," he said simply. "Family is everything to me, Sophie. But honor defines what family means. Without principles, we're nothing but thugs with expensive suits." I processed this revelation, understanding now why he'd watched me for months, why he'd devised these tests. "You've been looking for someone who could see the truth without being told. Someone who understands the complexity of loyalty." His gaze intensified. "Someone who might understand me." "Why?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. "Because I'm rebuilding," he said quietly, "creating something legitimate from the ashes of my family's complicated legacy. And I want—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I want someone to share it with who sees me clearly. Not the reputation or the power, but the man, and that's the real prize," I said, understanding dawning. "Not the mansion. The mansion is yours if you want it," he replied. "I meant what I said. I don't break promises, but you're right. That was never the true wager." He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "The real question, Sophie, is what you want. Now that you know the truth about me, about the tests, what do you choose?" In that moment, standing in a room filled with evidence of his complicated past, I recognized the crossroads before me, the safe path back to my familiar struggles, or the unknown territory of Dante Moretti's world, a world being transformed from shadow to light. "I want honesty," I said finally. "No more games, no more tests. If we're going to explore whatever this is between us, it needs to be real." Relief and something deeper flickered across his features. "Agreed. I'll keep my job at Bellissimo," I continued, needing to establish my independence. "At least for now, and I'll stay in my apartment until I decide otherwise." He nodded, accepting my terms without argument. "And the mansion?" I considered the grand, empty house with its painful memories and gorgeous views. "Sell it. Donate the proceeds to addiction treatment programs." His smile was immediate and genuine. "In Mia's name. She'd appreciate that. As for us," I took a deep breath, stepping into uncertainty with eyes wide open. "We start from the beginning. Dinner, conversations, learning each other as equals, no wagers, no power plays." "I'd like that," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard before. "Though I should warn you, I still don't lose, Sophie. Not at things that truly matter." The declaration held no threat, only a promise that sent warmth spreading through my chest. Neither do I. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of Dante's Gold Coast penthouse, our penthouse now, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. My mother occupied the guest suite, her health improving under the care of specialists Dante had insisted on consulting. I still worked 3 shifts a week at Bellissimo, though now it was by choice rather than necessity. Warm arms encircled me from behind, and I leaned back against Dante's chest, savoring the solid strength of him. "Happy?" he murmured against my hair. I turned in his embrace, studying the face that had become as familiar to me as my own. The dangerous edge remained. Some aspects of a man never change, but now it was tempered by the openness he showed only to me. "Yes," I said simply. "Though I'm still smarter than you." His laugh rumbled through his chest. "Prove it." "I chose you," I replied, rising on tiptoes to press my lips to his. "Smartest decision I ever made, As his arms tightened around me, deepening our kiss with a hunger that still took my breath away, I realized that some wagers were worth the risk. In the game of life and love, sometimes the greatest victory comes not from winning, but from having the courage to play.